Hi guys, it's Jason. Today I'm going to be talking to Scott O'Leary, who is the CEO of Triumph, and Sean Bischoff, aka Rusto, who is Triumph's general manager. Let's begin with the questions. Scott, first question, what is Triumph?
Yeah, so I'm Scott O'Leary. I'm the CEO of Triumph Esports. Triumph Esports is a company that's comprised of two main divisions. One is Team Triumph that has rosters in CSGO, Overwatch, Call of Duty, and Apex Legends. And the other side of the business is Ravelcade, which is an online and live event activation company and also a content company that creates original content. Um, the goal for Team Triumph, or the vision for Team Triumph, is to be a developmental organization, sort of the Path to Pro organization, where we scout talent, we find emerging talent, we provide them with all the coaching and resources and structure they need to bring their game to the next level. And we want to bring them from second tier or semi pro to top tier, and help them succeed in all their goals and initiatives. Sean, do you have anything you'd want to add to that?
I think you pretty much touched on everything, Scott. Like more or less what the foundation of Triumph's all about. Where we're starting. I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth in the esports industry. There's like a lot of avenues that people haven't really explored yet. We're hoping to kind of um, have more of a unique business model, things that haven't been done yet, and try to be a little bit more creative moving forward. But fundamentally, we're all about development and competition. So we want to um, put all of our resource into developing our teams, our players, making them the best, making them the most professional in the world. I mean, that's really the goal.
And
That's great.
we don't intend to spend 20 to 40 million dollars on a franchise league. We think our resources would be better spent, as I said, finding, scouting, and developing talent, and essentially feeding and selling those players into the franchise leagues. That's what makes us a little bit different. Not that we wouldn't operate a professional franchise league if someone with deep pockets wanted to buy one and contract with us to operate it. We would certainly do that, but we're not going to finance it or look to finance it ourselves.
Scott, what are your goals for Triumph to help manage players once they've moved on to other organizations?
Yeah, so that's absolutely one of our goals, especially the players that we think have a good future, in creating content. Is as we move them, we would still like to be the players' representative of record, and get sponsorship deals for them and counsel them and represent them with any contract negotiations they have with their new employer.
How did you get started in esports, Scott? What's your background?
So it's really a 25-year professional journey. I have a you know I've been playing video games since 1979 on my Atari 2600, right? So I'm as authentic as it comes when it comes to playing video games. But Professionally, I have an undergraduate degree in computer science from University of Massachusetts. I have a master's degree in information technology from Bentley University. I spent 25 years in the telecommunications space, from startups to Fortune 500 companies, managing technology, computer networks, teams of technologists and creative staff. Um, and I got to the point in my career where it really just wasn't fulfilling anymore. And I wanted to do something that not only was right in my sweet spot, but also was a point of passion for me. So I started Rivalcade, and the initial thought behind Rivalcade was to create essentially a LAN center that could double as a training center for teams, or a content production studio. Sort of all the things we're looking at now with opening a facility. Just at the time, it was more focused on grassroots kind of stuff. Um, and as time went on, we brought a team into the picture, um, which really was a crucial component to getting Kevin Garnett interested in what we were doing. Um, to circle back, so I got introduced to KG by a gentleman named George Daniel, who's been working with KG for a couple of years. I've been working with George, trying to launch various initiatives in esports, from from a league of our own, a franchise league of our own, the EBL, which looked promising for a time, but never got off the ground. And so I established a good trusting relationship with George, and he was doing some work for Kevin, and thought it would be, once we brought Team Triumph into the fold, he thought it would be a good fit, potentially for Kevin. So he made the introduction. I gave him the investor pitch over the course of 2 or 3 online video meetings, much like we're having right now. And he was a believer in the vision, and came on board last summer with a preliminary, I call it angel investment, and has really been instrumental in helping us develop some of the content initiatives that we've got coming up, and we hope to integrate our teams and players into some of those initiatives as well, because I think that's where we'll really start to get or be able to leverage his influence in a great way.
My name's Sean Bischoff. I'm general manager for Team Triumph, and I came in pretty recently, but I've worked for the last 4 years in esports exclusively as a team manager and a coach for various teams, mostly in 2 games that we compete in. And prior to that, I did a lot of management training and like sales and stuff like that. I ran sales offices, not really anything interesting, very snooze. But when I started playing competitively like 4 or 5 years ago, but it turns out I wasn't good enough to really play like at the highest level, and I found a passion competing in esports and in gaming that I had back when I played basketball, like in high school. So it was really interesting to me 4 years ago to realize like there's so much about esports that it mirrors traditional sports, and so I fell in love with it, and I started competing. When I realized it wasn't good enough, I started managing and coaching, basically, because those who can't teach, and after doing that for a while, I kind of realized after like a year or so that there's really not a lot of leadership in the esports industry. It's still a pretty young industry. So at the team level, you have a lot of people that have no schooling, no experience, and there's a lot of misguidance going on with teams. And so a lot of teams compete for a long time. They don't really develop or ever do anything with their time. They're just kind of playing for fun. And so I wanted to bring in like more structure into team environment. So I did that for a few years. And Triumph popped up on my radar because I had friends like the founders of Triumph originally who have moved on. I believe one of our founders moved on to be a director of the NBA 2K League, right?
Yep.
And I knew these guys from the esports industry already. They reached out to me and talked to me about Triumph. They're going to put together a team with all the, all the values and stuff that I've always tried to push onto my teams. And so I couldn't join at the time, but I told them I was interested, and I kind of just supported them from afar. And then KG came in and helped fund the team, which is huge actually, because before that, before like a year or 2 ago, there was not really a lot of support from the traditional sports community for esports. And so seeing like big, like really big, like notorious sports athletes, Hall of Famers like Kevin, actually invest their time and their money and their interest into esports was a huge boost for the industry and for me personally. So it really opened the door to like what our industry could be, if all these, famous large athletes would support us and build their own teams and stuff like that. And so I saw Triumph start having a lot of success with KG's support, as well as all the great people that are already a part of the organization. And so I competed, in leagues with Triumph over the course of a year or so until just recently when I joined as general manager. And so, yeah, I guess that's pretty much my background. And now, everything that I'm doing is just trying to bring the same structure that traditional sports has and bring it to esports in terms of team development, like Scott said, and focusing on actual team environments.
Why do you think a lot of these more traditional coaches or players from traditional sports are suddenly getting into esports?
I think a lot of athletes from sports like basketball, football, big NBA players like Kevin, the reason why there's so much interest from that industry in esports all of a sudden, it's multifaceted, right? There's a lot of different reasons. If you're somebody who's just hearing about esports for the first time, it's probably because you see some million viewer Twitch stream with a $2 million prize pool, and you go, holy crap, like they're getting paid to play video games, and you get immediately interested, right? And so I think the definitely like the business part of it is definitely there, but another reason is that a lot of athletes realize, oh, esports athletes, they go through the same process as us. You know, they're working just as hard as us. Like they're in a team environment. You know, a lot of athletes will realize the similarities between sports and esports, and then that makes them interested because, you know, if you're an athlete for 20, 30 years, you know, you love competition. And once you realize esports is competitive, you just go, oh, okay, this is another way to be competitive. And also because people just like gaming, right? Like gaming is like one of the biggest industries in the world now. You know, it's bigger than Hollywood. It's bigger than the music industry by some measures. So I think it's multifaceted for sure. And it's only going to grow from now. I mean, we're still in a very early stage as an industry for sure.
If I could jump in, I think what's interesting about the athletes that are getting involved in esports now is I think it's also somewhat generational, right? So Generation X is really the first generation, like myself, like Kevin, that grew up their whole lives playing video games for the most part. So now, you know, in their adulthood, especially for athletes like Kevin, you know, post-career, you know, looking to do the next big thing, you know, there's a business opportunity, but, you know, they also now, as former athletes, they get to be part of the ownership group of something that potentially could be just as big as some of these bigger, more traditional sports leagues, you know, someday. So they, you know, they get a chance to be involved at the ground level with something that could be huge, and they don't have to be a multi-billionaire. You know, being a multi-millionaire, like most of them are, certainly helps, right? But you know, it's an opportunity for them to get involved in something, you know, that is growing at a, you know, remarkable pace and could, you know, potentially someday outpace traditional sports.
Why do these esports players seem like they're starting so much younger than athletes from traditional sports?
There's sort of an illusion that the esports athletes are younger than traditional, you know, sports athletes. I think it's not totally an illusion because a lot of professionals are 16, 17 years old. But if you think about the NBA, we'll stick to the NBA just for like, the example that I want to give. It's like a lot of players goes, you know, straight out of like first year of college. They're 19 years old, 20 years old, going into making multi-million-dollar contracts as professionals. They're also young. You know, a lot of the players that are in the NBA or in the NFL or any of these leagues are very young. Kevin Garnett, right? He was drafted right out of high school, so you would say maybe he wasn't totally mature. You know, he was only 18. You know, he's getting a multi-million-dollar contract fresh out of high school. So it's the same thing with esports athletes. It's like you have kids who are 17, 18 years old who are getting signed to organizations like ours, making full-time, you know, a full-time living just to play video games. It seems like, you know, there's not a whole lot of like a big development track for these kids, and they're kind of getting thrown into this crazy industry really young. But I think it's just an illusion because the industry is so different. You know, they're not competing. They're not exercising like 10 hours a day, and like they're not all 7 feet tall like KG. You know, like it's just an illusion because of internet culture. I think that everybody's just kind of a lot less like I guess socially mature, but they're still like at the same level as when traditional athletes are getting signed into major leagues.
And I think what's important to note about the age of the players, most of the players that we have signed that play for us is, you know, we're still looking for that level of dedication, you know, to your craft and competitive spirit, you know, the desire to be the best. And that's not necessarily a common commodity, right? So it's definitely what separates the good from the great. And, you know, that's the challenge, right? That's the secret sauce. That's what you got to look for. You got to look for the talent and the desire. Both have to be there to make someone, you know, truly special at anything. And esports is no different.
My next question is, how can Kevin Garnett and his experience in traditional sports help Triumph as an org and the players competing for it?
Yeah, I'll jump in there first. You know, I think KG is a great role model for, you know, all of our players and honestly our staff as well, including myself. You know, bring bring as much intensity and joy as you can to anything and everything that you're doing. Give it your full effort and dedication, to your craft, loyalty to your teammates. Just that competitive drive and spirit. Nobody was more of an intense competitor than Kevin Garnett. So, that's kind of the philosophy. Well, yet at the same time, no one was a better teammate or a more loyal teammate, right? And those two things for me go hand in hand. So that's what I hope, the kind of environment and the kind of culture we can set up here at Triumph. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I would mostly agree. I'd say like the best part about having a Hall of Fame athlete partner with our organization is he's a really good example that a lot of his values translate across different industries. So just because he did something different, he wasn't a gamer. Like his intensity, his dedication, the hard work, it's something that you can still learn from in our industry and what we do every day. So he could still be a teacher in that way. And it's extremely valuable for sure.
Yeah, I think that, we have some original content ideas that we're working on with Kevin and his, immediate circle of friends, honestly, that we think will be really interesting and that we hope, Kevin's fans and esports fans in general, keep an eye out for. Can't really say too much more than that right now, but, we think there's an opportunity to marry our players with him and his circle of friends and bring two potentially diverse, subgroups of society together into a more mainstream acceptance of, esports and pop culture and traditional sports. I think that's where esports needs to get. It's growing in a exponential way. However, I think it could grow even faster if it embraced traditional pop culture and even the traditional sports video games a little bit more. I think that's an easy way to cross over and get the masses to really jump on board to all the different games. I think once you successfully pull off that crossover, you're going to get fans of other games and other content watching that maybe they wouldn't have done normally. And so that's something that we're trying to do here at Triumph.
We talked about some of the similarities. Like some of the similarities between esports and traditional sports are very interesting. Like the competition and the dedication, the hard work. It's all the same, right? There's a big mental game in competing. But to follow up on what Scott said, like our cultures between traditional sports athletes and esports athletes are very different, and it's extremely it creates unique challenges that I don't think anyone has ever really had to deal with before. Esports athletes live almost entirely like online, right? And it sort of goes hand in hand with today's new online culture. Everybody's online all day, gaming, on social media, stuff like that. So it's like entire communities are created in the esports industry on the internet, on social media. Everybody's friends are basically just online. It's like it's very, very different than how communities are built in traditional sports. And so one of our goals definitely is to bring that together, bring our culture together with traditional sports cultures, but also figure out what direction do we need to go as a business in order to work with a subculture that's really never been developed before. It's like a totally new frontier in a way on this internet esports culture.
What are you hoping to get from Kevin Garnett in regards to building an athletic culture and lifestyle around esports?
Yeah, so to help get to the next level and to improve the lifestyle of all of our players and provide them with literally all the resources they need to train and compete at the top level. We actually are looking at facility in the LA area that we're going to build out to be our content production studio, our training facility, our boot camp facility. We'd like to get our players out there at least on a temporary basis, maybe even on a permanent basis in that area, so that we can in a more consistent way, provide them with the resources they need to train and compete and produce content for our brands and partners. Um, that really is the key to reaching that top level. Currently we are, we're the little engine that could. I think we're doing a great job, virtually in a diverse geographic kind of a way, or a remote way. But I think we all understand that that's where we want to get to. So that's what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges for esports athletes is definitely physical health. I would say, just to be straight up about it. Traditional athletes, like NBA basketball players, they spend 8 hours a day working out. Their diets are very meticulous. Professional gamers, not so much, right? So I think there's a huge opportunity for us and for every organization really to try to bring better physical health regimens and resources to esports athletes, because most of them are just sitting around on their computer, literally in a chair, 8 to 12 hours a day, just staring at a screen, right? Like drinking, energy drinks and not exactly living the healthiest life. Now, I don't mean to archetype everybody. That's not the case for everybody. But there's definitely an opportunity to bring more physical health resources to players, because, esports is all about the mental game, which is great. We already kind of touched on that. But the truth is, if you're not physically healthy, you're not maintaining your body, you're not at least getting a little bit of exercise a day, or maintaining some sort of stretching routine or something like that in between these 12-hour gaming sessions, then your mental is going to be at half capacity. So we definitely, as an organization, want to provide a facility and provide resources to help take our players' mental game to the next level via physical preparations.
Is it a new thing for people to start building facilities for these esports organizations?
So it's already kind of become pretty standard at the highest level of esports to provide, more physical resource. So a lot of teams, most professional teams, are working out of some sort of physical location, some sort of facility, whether it's a team house. A lot of teams have like multiple apartments next door to each other, things like that. Some organizations have gone a little further, like internationally. Some Chinese organizations, some European organizations, to put together like really serious training facilities and have their players with. I mean, a lot of organizations have, literally personal chefs, personal trainers. Everybody has to, be on an exercise regimen to make sure, to kind of hold them accountable. So as you move up the ladder in esports to competing at a higher and higher level, you're already seeing these resources in place. But these resources are in place for the top teams in the world, because it costs a lot of money usually to run a big facility. And so to kind of circle back onto what our goal as Triumph is like, we want to provide the same, world-class resource to more of a developmental system where you don't have to be the best player in the world to have this utility, to have some sort of dietitian, some sort of help, some sort of support, maybe some training, some resource, right? And that's the goal, is to get that accessible to everybody. Because if you're a traditional sports player, I mean, all you have to do is go outside, play your sport, you're going to get exercise, you're going to be healthy generally. But esports at the lower level, a lot of athletes do not have this resource, and that's kind of our goal. Yeah, the great thing about having Kevin, with our organization is that it's pretty unique in that a lot of organizations at our level or higher don't really have traditional sports figures partnered with them. So he has a lot of knowledge in how to train and how to stay mentally fit, physically fit. And so, as we move into a more formal location, I'm hoping that, him and the people that he knows, we can all work together to create a regiment or some sort of, resource that other teams just don't have, not having that traditional sports background.
And what's interesting about having the physical space that you can operate out of is it's actually part of the business model as well. So not only does it allow us to create content and train our teams, which are vital to our plans, but the brands and partners that we're speaking to are actually very interested in those kinds of spaces for sponsorship opportunities. It's a great opportunity for them to showcase their new products, to essentially sponsor a space, and be integrated in everything that we do. So although it is an expense, that's for sure, by doing that, there are some additional opportunities with brands and partners that present themselves when you have a space like that. Like you've seen with other organizations, they create content around, specifically for their brands out of these facilities.